Picture this. It's somewhere between 2007 and 2014. The corporate landscape is just, well, it's totally unrecognizable. Markets are literally crashing, established businesses are getting upended left and right, and globalization is rewriting the rulebook practically overnight. Absolute chaos in boardrooms everywhere. Now, when your organization's survival is suddenly on the line, what do executives usually do? They panic, or they fall back on just their gut feelings. But here's the thing. In times of massive uncertainty, trusting your gut is a complete recipe for disaster. What executives really need in those high-stakes moments, and honestly what all of us need when facing any complex business challenge, is structured thinking. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to figure out exactly how to bring some order to the chaos of business strategy. Okay, right off the bat, I want to set some expectations here, because there's a huge misconception out there. People love to treat management models like they're these magical solve-all formulas, right? Like they hold the absolute sole truth. But as our source text perfectly points out, management models are nothing more and nothing less than useful tools. That's it. They're practical compasses. They're memory aids designed to just reduce complexity. They aren't going to magically make the hard decisions for you, but they do give you a vital new way of looking at a situation. Plus, they give your team a shared common language, so you can actually sit down and figure out a real path forward together. And that brings us to the ultimate strategist toolbox. For this explainer, we're pulling directly from the highly acclaimed book Key Management Models by Gerben Vandenberg and Paul Petersma. You can really just think of this book as a masterclass in a box. I mean, it's packed with over 75 different frameworks, covering literally everything from corporate strategy and finance all the way over to HR and innovation. But look, don't worry, instead of overwhelming you with all 75 today, we're just going to crack open this toolbox and take a really deep dive into 3 of the absolute most vital, foundational frameworks that every single successful manager needs to know. So here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll examine Ansoff's growth matrix. Second, we'll look at the BCG matrix. And finally, we'll explore the strategic dialogue. All right, tool number 1, Ansoff's growth matrix. Let's dive right into this. For this next part, I want you to step into the shoes of a strategist apprentice. Imagine your company wants to grow. The choices can be completely paralyzing, right? Like, do we invent something brand new? Do we try selling to a whole new country? Well, Ansoff gives us a brilliant way to structure these massive decisions. He argues that a company's strategic development actually boils down to 2 related parts. First up, you have the portfolio strategy. Think of this as the dots on the horizon. It's the ultimate future scope of your business. Basically, where do you want to end up? Then, secondly, you have the competitive strategy. And this is the route you take to reach those dots. It's the specific, distinct approach you're going to use to succeed. You absolutely have to define both things, the final destination and the map to get there. So, to figure out those dots on the horizon, we use Ansoff's incredibly famous 4-quadrant product and market grid. It's actually pretty simple when you break it down. Across the horizontal axis, we plot our products, starting from the products we currently have all the way to entirely new ones. And then, on the vertical axis, we plot our markets, so going from the markets we already serve straight up to entirely new markets. When we cross these 2 dimensions, boom, the grid gives us 4 very distinct strategic directions for growth. Let's look at that first box, market penetration. This is where you just sell more of your existing products to your existing markets. It's really all about just grabbing more market share. Moving out from there, we hit market development. This means taking your current products and finding totally new markets for them. Next up is product development, which is where you create brand new products, but you sell them to the loyal customers you already have. And finally, sitting way out in the most extreme corner, you've got diversification. This is selling entirely new products to entirely new markets. It's basically waking up one day and deciding you're going to stop selling cardboard boxes on Earth and start selling moon rovers to aliens. Now, what is absolutely crucial to grasp here is how drastically your risk profile shifts as you move between these boxes. Market penetration, pretty safe. Diversification, insanely risky, because you're dealing with the complete unknown in both what you're making and who you're selling it to. This grid forces you to stare that risk right in the face and acknowledge exactly what you're signing up for. Moving right along to tool number 2, the BCG matrix. This one was actually developed by the Boston Consulting Group back in the 1970s, and it brilliantly illustrates the ultimate lens for evaluating your product portfolio. It answers a really painful question for executives. Where on earth do we put our money and where do we cut our losses? The matrix maps out 2 critical dimensions. You've got relative market share on the vertical axis and market growth on the horizontal axis. Depending on where a product lands on this grid, it drops into one of 4 honestly very memorable categories: stars, cash cows, question marks, and dogs. The whole underlying assumption here is that a truly healthy company absolutely needs a balanced portfolio. You need high-growth products that require a lot of cash, but those have to be supported by steady, low-growth products that generate a bunch of excess cash. Let's trace the ideal life cycle of a product through this matrix. Usually, you're going to start by taking a risk on a question mark. This is a product sitting in a high-growth market, but right now you only have a tiny market share, so it needs a ton of investment just to figure out if it's even going to succeed. Now, if it does work out, it grows into a star. Stars are awesome. They have high market share in high-growth markets. They're super profitable, but the catch is you still have to invest heavily just to maintain that top-tier position. Over time, as that market inevitably matures and growth starts to slow down, your star transforms into a cash cow. You've got massive market share, but the market itself isn't really growing anymore. And this is actually brilliant because you don't need to pour heavy investments into it anymore. You literally just milk the cash cow to fund all your new question marks. And finally, well, you have the dogs. Low market share in a low growth market. They just are profitable. And honestly, the hardest job of any manager is finding the strict discipline to divest those dogs, metaphorically sending them to a nice farm upstate, so they finally stop draining your valuable resources. And that brings us to our final framework, tool number 3, the strategic dialogue. Now, Ansoff and BCG, they are fantastic analytical tools for sure, but they often lead to a pretty major problem: ivory tower planning. You know the drill. Executives sit in a closed room, draw up some fancy matrices, and then they're completely shocked when the strategy falls apart on the ground. To fix this, we look at the strategic dialogue. Take a look at the lemniscate or infinity loop shape. This model visualizes a crucial truth. Strategy is literally never a straight line. The left side of the loop is all about formulation, really understanding your capabilities and what you aspire to do. Then, the right side is all about implementation, operationalizing those choices, and actually getting them done. The loop shows us that this has to be an ongoing dialogue. It constantly connects your internal analysis with external scenarios in this fluid, continuous cycle. You can't just write a grand plan, shove it in a desk drawer, and execute it blindly. You formulate, you implement, you learn from it, and then you feed all those learnings right back into your formulation. It never stops. And this continuous dialogue process is specifically designed to protect you from some classic strategy traps. Actually, let me ask you, have you ever watched a company completely lose its own identity just because it was blindly following a competitor? Yeah, that's the Me Too pitfall. Or what about a company that gets entirely derailed by shiny new initiatives without actually stopping to rationally consider them? We call that the grass is greener trap. We also constantly see companies getting stuck in paralysis by analysis, where they're completely unable to make a single move because they're obsessively trying to calculate risk down to the very last decimal point. Or my absolute personal favorite, the hockey stick effect. This is when executives prioritize wild, unchecked ambition over actual, hard data, and you end up with these insanely optimistic, completely unrealistic long-term forecasts. The strategic dialogue prevents all of this nonsense by insisting on actual, ground-level engagement and constant iterative reality checks. So, the absolutely crucial point here is summed up perfectly in this neat little formula. Formulation times mobilization times realization equals strategic success. Now notice closely that this is multiplication. It is not addition. If any single one of those variables drops to 0, your total success is 0, period. In the corporate world, we spend so much time on formulation, right? Sweating over getting the perfect plan. And we spend plenty of time on realization, all that project management, hitting milestones, the whole shebang. But the missing link is almost always the M, mobilization. This means you actually have to organize involvement, engage your key business partners, and secure true, genuine buy-in from the people who actually have to do the heavy lifting on a Tuesday morning. The strategic dialogue model definitively proves that whatever brilliant plan you formulate in the boardroom literally only matters if you can mobilize the workforce to realize it. Now, as we start to wrap up this journey through our Strategist toolkit, we really have to pause and ask a fundamental question. Can a model actually guarantee success? Like, if you perfectly master the Ansoff grid, flawlessly plot your BCG matrix, and map out this incredible strategic dialogue, are you guaranteed to win? The absolute, undeniable answer is no. No way. Remember that quote we talked about right at the beginning? No framework can objectively resolve a complex, messy, entirely human problem on its own. They are just maps, and a map is never, ever a substitute for actually getting out there and navigating the territory. I want to leave you today with this final, highly provocative thought straight from the authors of Key Management Models. Structuring reality is completely different from managing reality. Think about that for a second. These tools, they give you the structure. They help clear the fog. They help you communicate brilliantly with your team. But at the end of the day,
You still have to step out from behind the slides, lead your actual people, and manage the incredibly messy, completely unpredictable reality of doing business. So absolutely, open up that toolkit, use these models to clarify your thinking, but never forget that the real work, it actually starts the minute the presentation ends. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.